idea of the World Owl Hall of Fame. Now, this isn't something that we just say, oh, I think you should get an award. It's nominations need to be submitted, and it is very difficult to get good nominations because most people are just happily doing their own little thing, and nobody other than their spouse knows everything that they're doing because they're just doing it because they love it. So we have to get good nominations, which is difficult in the first place. And then we don't do the judging. We have experts from around the world do the judging. It's not done in-house here. And that's what gives credibility to them. So these are our judges this year for the World Owl Hall of Fame Awards. David Johnson, many of you have met if you've been to an owl festival before. He's been to many of them. He's the director of the Global Owl Project, so he's from the United States. Tony Warburton, the founder of the World Owl Trust in England. How many of you met him when he was here? He's a fun guy. Louise Schimmel from the Cascades Raptor Center out in Oregon in the USA. She's an amazing rehabber out there. Jonathan Hoff from South Africa, who many of you have met also, doing pretty amazing things there. And Lucia Luce Severinghaus from Taiwan. So some of you met her when she was here also. So these are mostly World Owl Hall of Fame Award winners themselves that are doing the judging. So we're purposely trying to get people who are active in different fields. So some are more towards education or rehabilitation, some are more researchers, some are more conservationists. So we're trying to cover with our judges a broad range of things that people can be doing to benefit owls. And we also want broad geographic representation, because what we found early on when we had judges mostly from North America and Europe, there was definitely a bias for, or sometimes against, people who were more local. So if it was somebody that lived nearby me and I knew him well, maybe I didn't like him and I scored him lower. So it's better to have people from around the world to get rid of that local bias, because it definitely was there. The sponsors of the World Owl Hall of Fame, obviously the International Owl Center, the Global Owl Project. David Johnson makes all of our awards for us, which you will see. Bob Kurland and Mary Bergter and the Carl and Verna Schmidt Foundation are the ones that sponsor the travel for our award winners to be able to come to the festival, which is a very important part of making this award more prestigious and also makes our festival so much significantly better. The Special Achievement Award is for humans who have made a significant contribution to owls through a specific project or outstanding efforts in a specific geographic area. So if you're working in a small country but doing absolutely amazing things, or you're doing one very focused project that has a very big impact, that's the type of people that fall into the Special Achievement Award category. And sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out, well, is this person in this category or that category? So but these are the general guidelines that we use for the Special Achievement Award category. And our first award winner, who is not able to be here, is, and I'm not even certain how to pronounce his last name properly, Yadav Ghimirey from Nepal. Some of you maybe met Raju Akaria when he was here from Nepal. How many of you met Raju? A bunch of you know quite a few of these people. It's kind of funny, if you went to a World Owl Conference, you would know a lot of the people there if you've been to many of our banquets. And Yadav is one, Raju actually nominated him. He has done quite a lot of work with Raju in Nepal, which is a country where a whole lot of owl education is needed. Owl everything is needed over there. So Yadav is the one who conducted the first owl conservation camp in 2008 in Nepal. And since then, he's been involved in one way or another in 600 owl conservation camps. They've educated over 18,000 students and 26,000 members of the general public. He co-authored 2 books on owls in Nepali. You can test out your Nepali here, but I've got one of them. I'll put that back on the table so you can check it out. My Google Translate had fun with that thing. You move it a little bit and it changes, it says a totally different word, and then you move it slightly and it says a totally different word, but my Nepali isn't so good. So 2 different books about owls in Nepali. He helped with surveys to assess the impact of hunting and trade in owls in Nepal, which is a big issue because they're being illegally traded to India and China. So it's a very difficult and touchy thing to investigate because it goes all the way up to the highest level of government, and your life might be a little bit in danger if you're peeking into that kind of stuff. He came up with the idea for a Voice of Owls radio program to reach the general public, to educate people about owls. And I have to use my notes for this because we're talking about some people who have done some pretty substantial stuff and it doesn't all fit in my head at once. He's the editor of Nepali newsletter about owls for the public. And he plays a very key role in the Nepal Owl Festival, which is a sister festival to our festival, which now happens the first week in February every year. So if you're going to be in Nepal, schedule your visit for early February. And he's a team member of the National Owl Conservation Action Plan, and he served on the team that helped gain threatened status for 9 different owl species in Nepal. So he really did a lot. He was really gung-ho to come, and they denied his visa application. So apparently they're denying about 50% of people applying to come to the US from Nepal, even legitimate folks. So he was not able to be here tonight. So we will have to mail his award to him. The second one that we're going to present tonight is to Dr. Frederick Gehlbach from Texas. And he himself is not able to be here. But let me go through some of what he's done, and we have somebody here to receive the award on his behalf. He has spent, when we go through these, we have some people who put a lot of time into owls. He's worked over 50 years with owls, predominantly small owls, and especially the eastern screech owl, and he literally wrote the book on the species. And this is a serious book. This isn't just a fluffy little book. There is an amazing amount of data in this book. Does it look familiar, Julie? Yes. My best friend Julie gave me this book. And it's just absolutely astounding how much information is in there. He wrote the Birds of North America accounts on 3 different owl species. These are basically the authoritative accounts on summaries of all the recent research on the species. So he did that for 3 different owl species. Obviously the eastern screech owl. He also did the whiskered screech owl, which he co-authored, and the elf owl account, which he co-authored. He wrote 3 owl chapters in the Rafters of New Mexico. He's done at least 25 other scientific publications on owls, and he's done very extensive work in urban and rural areas in Waco, Texas, with his wife Nancy, who also studies owls. That's nice, isn't it? They have studied owls in Arizona also. So the species they've studied include whiskered screech owl, elf owl, northern pygmy owl, flammulated owl, western screech owl, and northern saw-whet owls. And they found that very often they're nesting in clusters, either of same species or mixed species, and they're nesting earlier than they used to nest, which is probably looking at climate change. He actually moved to be closer to his study subjects and championed his homeowner association to create a 15-acre wildlife preserve around the ravine where the owls were living. He wrote a regular column for the Waco Herald Tribune, which I knew because I get Google alerts on owls, so periodically every now and then I'd see an article pop up by Fred Gehlbach. So that was fun. And he was a professor at Baylor University and worked with a whole lot of students over the years, including Dr. Sherry McCullough, who's here to receive the award on his behalf. So Sherry, do you want to come up here and say a few words about Dr. Gehlbach?
Fred Gehlbach is the reason why I'm standing in front of you today. There's no 2 ways about it. When I told my mom I wanted to go back to college and complete my college degree, she absolutely had a cow. Aren't you going to stay home with those kids? Who's going to be with those kids? You need to stay home with those kids. Stay home with those kids. Fred Gehlbach said, Sherry, I want you to go to college and I want you to finish because someday you're going to get a PhD and you're going to be teaching other people what it's like to teach. He's the one who mentored me throughout not only my master's experience, but he's the one that's responsible for me getting a PhD because I really didn't think I could. I thought it was beyond my academic prowess to be able to do something like that. His wife Nancy was just as supportive. As a matter of fact, she would call me the same way a mother would, about once a month, and ask me how I was doing. How did I do on my last botany test? I mean, it was just like having a second mother. I tell you this because with all of the scholastic achievements and with all of the awesome things that he's done for the research world, I think the biggest impact that he's made is on his students, people like me, people that came to his classes and learned so much to take that knowledge out to others and spread it, just like ripples in a pond. He's also one of the most humble people that I've ever known. Of course, we all kind of get on our high horse about our research, but the bottom line is he loved these animals so much and wanted to make sure that they were cared for, that people appreciated them, and that when people saw owls, they wouldn't throw softballs or rocks at them the way that he did when he was way younger. He probably wouldn't want me to tell you that. Nancy, as a matter of fact, Nancy said, "Hey, make sure you say softball." I thank you all so much for your support, for all the support that's gone on here with Carla and the work that she's done. And mainly thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to come here and accept this honor on his behalf. He is medically unable to travel. He's confined to a wheelchair, and age has gotten the best of him. But we all know in our hearts that his legacy will live on forever. Thank you.
We've never had two people with the same name before. Fred Koning from the Netherlands, who I've had the pleasure of meeting before. And I have to say, it was at the World Owl Conference in Portugal that I heard his presentation, and I just sat there going, this man has over 60 years of data in the same location. I mean, so like the greats in our world have, maybe 30, 40 years of data, and he's got over 60 years of data in the same place. It is absolutely astounding. And he's not a professional biologist. He was a tulip grower for a good chunk of his career and learned a lot of this stuff on the side, which I'll let him talk about a little bit. So he's just an extremely dedicated, motivated, self-taught person who has done a huge amount of research. So now I'm going to see if I can pronounce this right, and you can laugh at my Dutch pronunciation. So he worked in the Amsterdamse waterleiding downing. Something like that? Okay, you could understand what I said? Okay. It's basically an 8,400 acre coastal dune area where the city of Amsterdam gets their water from. He tracks all the raptor nests in the area, so that's tawny owl, little owl, long-eared owls, also northern goshawks, common buzzards, European honey buzzards, and Eurasian hobbies. So he runs around banding everything, banding the young ones. He bands adult tawnies in the fall and winter, so that's where the bulk of his research has been, is with tawny owls. He does a lot of pellet analysis, and when he had kids, guess who was out in the field with him? And I heard that they had really small hands when they were young, so they could get into nests. His son, there he is. And obviously he turned out okay, right? He's not scarred for life or anything. He became a biology teacher also. And there's this fantastic picture of Fred when he was young. How old were you in that picture, Fred?
I think I was 16.
About 16, so he's building artificial nests because the gamekeepers were shooting all the hawks way back in the 50s because they didn't like them because they eat prey, right? And owls don't build their own nests. There wasn't places for owls to nest. So when he was a teenager, he was building nests, artificial nests, and enlisting his friends to go out and put these up so owls would have a place to nest. And some of the stuff that he's found over the years, he found that overgrazing by cattle and deer caused a 70% reduction in the breeding birds in the area. And because of his long-term research, he was able to get that changed. The overgrazing by the cattle was removed, and now there's a promised reduction in the deer herd to avoid that also, because of his research, that long-term research. Another thing that happened, we always get European invasive species. Well, they get American invasive species sometimes. So they got black cherry trees over there, and to try and kill them, they tilled the ground, which removed all the grass and all the small mammals, and just totally devastated the raptor population. So he was able to document that and get that stopped also. So this is really making a difference. He was able to document the interrelationship of all these different raptor species and how they changed over time, and they've changed dramatically over time with land use and other things. And he also wrote a book, and you can laugh at my pronunciation because one of the sounds I can't make in Dutch is the UI sound, which is in the word owl, which is really frustrating. So it's something like uilen in the duinen.
Uilen in the diamond.
There we go. Owls in the dunes. At least I know what it means. So he has written a book also, co-authored that book. And he also does presentations for the public at the national level, regional levels. He's been on television before. He presents at World Owl conferences. So he's making sure he's reaching people with his work also. So he absolutely deserves this award. So Fred, do you want to come up here and say a few words? You have to hold it very close to your mouth.
Yes.
That was one word. Not blind you.
Yes, I'm very happy that I was awarded with this. I never expected such a thing. But Carla made contact already 4 years ago with my son whether I would like to receive this reward. And he never told something. And just 2 months ago I got the mail from Carla that I would get the award, so I was very surprised. And I'm very thankful to all of you, to Carla and Hein, and all you people who made these fantastic meals, and everything was perfect here. Thank you very much.
There we go. In multiple fields. So you can't just be a researcher, you can't just be an educator. You have to have your fingers in multiple fields, doing multiple things to earn a Champion of Owls award. And it's usually a lifetime of work, which we're calling a minimum of 20 years, and normally our Hall of Fame award winners far exceed that. And this year our Champion of Owls award winner is Norman Smith from Massachusetts, and he far exceeds that. He's been working with owls for over 50 years. So, yeah, amazing the level of... We've got Fred Gehlbach, who's been working with over 50 years. We have Fred Koning, who's been doing it for over 60 years. Norm Smith, who's been doing it for over 50 years. The amount of knowledge here is just astounding, and I love to soak it up. So Norm, I didn't realize, started doing owl rehab years and years and years ago. And he's rehabbed over 2,000 owls, and he realized that all these young owls, rather than trying to hand rear them or rear them in captivity, did much better if you fostered them into a wild nest. So he's fostered over 1,000 young owls out into wild nests. He also found out that not all these one-eyed owls needed to stay in captivity. Some of these one-eyed owls can be fantastic out in the wild on their own and live wonderful lives, so some of them were able to be released. And he's worked most famously with snowy owls out at Logan Airport in Boston. And he has trapped and relocated owls, and airplanes don't play well together. Air traffic controllers get nervous when there's big snowy owls out there. I mean, we like to see them, but not good for airplanes. So he has trapped and relocated over 850 snowy owls at Logan Airport over the years because they get zillions of them there. He co-wrote protocols for trapping and relocating owls that have been adopted by the USDA and implemented at other airports across Canada and the United States. Very good for owls, very good for airplanes, and for people. He was the first person to put a transmitter on a snowy owl to track it back to the breeding grounds, because they weren't certain, nobody knew for certain that these ones coming south actually went back to the Arctic Circle to breed. And he was the first one to put on a transmitter to actually prove that. He's analyzed over 5,000 owl pellets. He was one of the founding members of the International Snowy Owl Working Group. He was co-founder of Project Snowstorm, co-author of the Birds of North America account on snowy owls, and he recently retired as the director of Mass Audubon's Blue Hills Trailside Museum and the Norman Smith Environmental Education Center. Now, you don't just get an environmental education center named after you unless you've done a lot. So over 1 million people have been educated there during his tenure. Yeah, And he reaches an enormous audience because he's been on the front page of the New York Times, he's been in National Geographic, on Nova, I mean, you name it, he's kind of been in it. But his personal mission is to use the information that he's gathering from his research to stimulate a passion in everyone that he meets to help us better understand, appreciate, and care for the world in which he lives. And he lives this. This is not just, okay, I kind of want to do this. This is who he is. So Norm, come on up here. Let me give you your...
That was my first experience with a peregrine falcon. And here we are, 50 years later. Now every year when I started there, they would bring in small raptors that people found that care about these species is through educational programming. Getting out there and getting those kids to see what's happening, getting kids involved with citizen science, and that's what's going to make the difference. So I've dedicated my life to going out and getting kids excited and involved. And one of the things that was kind of interesting is my granddaughter Camilla, when she went to preschool, she said, "Grandpa, I have a favor to ask of you." And I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, kids in my school don't know what a snowy owl is. Can you catch a snowy owl and bring it to my class?" And I said, "Well, that might be difficult to do." So I went out to the airport, 4 o'clock in the morning, went out, put out a trap, caught a snowy owl, called her teacher, said, "I got a snowy owl, can I bring it to the class?" We brought it to the class, we banded that snowy owl. I brought it up to Duxbury Beach, we let it go, and she was very excited. Well, the following year when she was in kindergarten, she said, "Grandpa, I have a special request." I said, "What's that?" She goes, "It's about snowy owls." I said, "Oh." She says, "Now I want you this year, I want you to bring 2 snowy owls to my class." I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I want you to bring a boy and bring a girl so we can show the differences." I said, "Oh, that's going to be tough to do." So I go out to the airport. I was fortunate. 3 o'clock in the morning, I caught 2 snowy owls, a girl and a boy. So I call her up. I bring them in the classroom. The kids got a chance to help band, collect parasites off the birds. We actually had a satellite transmitter. We placed the transmitter on these birds. And these kids got a chance for the next 2 years to actually track that snowy owl. Now, Camilla's now in the 4th grade, so she's a cheerleader. So this fall, I went to one of her football games, and when I went and sat in the stands, I had at least 6 of the students come up to me and say, "Oh, Mr. Smith, we looked at your website, and the snowy owl isn't transmitting anymore." And I said, "Right, because the battery's gone out. Are you going to put any more transmitters?" It was one of the most exciting things we've ever done. So again, that stimulus, getting these kids excited and involved, is so key. And what they do at the Owl Center, by stimulating those kids, like today, walking around, see them taking apart pellets, building nest boxes, going to live owl demonstrations, that's getting them excited. These are going to be the stewards of our planet for the future. So we need to educate those kids now, and that's what we do, and that's how we can certainly get them excited. I remember when my daughter, Danielle, was in kindergarten, we got a call. My wife called me at work and said, "I just got a call from Mrs. Jan Ross, Danielle's teacher, and we have to go to the school for a conference because there's a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" She said she wouldn't talk about it on the phone, but she said Danielle has an issue, and it's something that we should bring her to someone to see, to have her evaluated. And I said, "Really?" So the next day we made an appointment, went in to saw the teacher, and the teacher said, "Children of her age, having an imagination is something that some kids have. But when you really believe that something's happening that isn't, I've seen that as a problem before, and we think you should take her to a psychiatrist to see if she can get some help." And I said, "Well, what's she talking about?" And she said, "Well, 2 weeks ago she came in and she was talking about going up to this place, Chickatabbit Hill or something, and sitting in this little plywood box and putting bracelets on hawks." And she said, "Yeah, we didn't really think that was a problem. But then when she came in last week, she was talking about going out to Logan Airport and walking around on the airfield and catching snow owls." Really? So I said, "Well, we'll have a conversation with her." So we put some slides together, and Danielle went to school and gave her first presentation on snowy owls to her class and showed the teacher that it wasn't fictitious and that she actually was out there doing these things. And again, it's one of the things that we want to do is we want to stimulate the interest and excitement of getting these kids out. When she did her science fair project on the saw-whet owl, I wasn't a believer that there was going to be any saw-whet owls around. And if you looked at the data, the year she caught 406 saw-whet owls in Massachusetts on our bird list for data collected for November, December, and January, there was 8 saw-whet owls seen. Yet she caught 400 saw-whet owls. How common are these things? Much more common than we think. And again, it shows, excitement. Now, part of that science fair project was to bring other students out and see your experience. So these kids would come out to the field. They'd say, Danielle, what's that noise out there? Oh, those are white-tailed deer. They're grunting. They're rutting out there. That clanging noise is their antlers. We're going to go out in that field out there with these deer. Oh, yeah, they won't bother you. These kids were paranoid about being out in the dark. They get out, they get a chance to go to the mist net, take out some owls, band them, process them. They come back and one of the kids says to me, the boogeyman doesn't live out there. It's safe to be in the woods at night. And again, an incredible experience for these kids to see. And we need to stimulate more citizen science projects. When I look at it and say, okay, snowy owls, when I started doing my research work, you read the literature, we know everything there is to know about snowy owls. But guess what? All that information that was written is all wrong. Not true at all. Snowy owls don't come because they're starving. They come because it's a banner year for food. Do they make it back to the Arctic? Yes, they do. Do they live to be 10 to 12 years old? Well, we know they can live at least to be 24. So we don't know a lot of this stuff. And we need to get these kids stimulated so they can go out there and find out what's happening in the real world. And you people can be the greatest portion of that. And again, everybody thinks that they don't have the information. It's amazing. If you share what you have, it's amazing what a difference we can make. Thanks.